Hey everyone, welcome back. Diving into your latest research on meditation has been fascinating. I mean, wow, you've really gone all in on this. We've got articles, scientific studies, even personal stories.
It's quite the collection.
It is. So, where do we even start with all of this? I'm thinking maybe we could use this deep dive to really clarify what meditation is, how it works, and then, of course, explore those potential benefits everyone's always talking about.
Sounds like a plan. And it's interesting that Wikipedia article you've got actually highlights something really important about meditation. You see, it's not just one thing. It's a whole family of different practices. But the common thread, training attention and awareness, that seems to be at the heart of it all. And that's where those potential mental benefits come into play.
Okay, so it's about harnessing the power of the mind, right?
And it's not exactly a new concept either, huh? I mean, you've got Llewellyn's complete book of meditation there, and it talks about how these practices have been around for centuries.
Exactly. I mean, you think Taoism, Buddhism, meditation has been an integral part of these traditions for centuries.
Wow. But then we see it popping up in the West, too. Like, even schools and the military are incorporating meditation these days. That's pretty fascinating, right? It's like this ancient wisdom is suddenly super relevant to our modern lives.
Right, and that relevance is reflected in the sheer variety of meditation techniques out there.
Oh, yeah. Like that inner smile meditation from Llewellyn's. Visualizing, smiling at your organs. It sounds a little out there, to be honest. It does, doesn't it? But it speaks to how these practices often utilize visualization and breath work to, I guess, kind of shift our internal state.
Okay, so finding what works for you is key. Because it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal, right?
Exactly. And that's where understanding the neuroscience behind meditation can be so helpful. I mean, you've done some research on that too, haven't you? Especially the work of Andrew Huberman.
Yes. He's a neuroscientist, and in one of his podcasts, he talks about how even something as basic as consciously controlling your breathing can be a form of meditation, and how different breathing patterns actually activate different parts of the brain.
And this ties in with your research on transcendental meditation as well. There's a book you have, Transcendental Meditation, The Essential Teachings. And it highlights the research showing that these practices, even for short periods, can lead to tangible benefits, reduced anxiety, better sleep.
And even potential benefits for heart health, right?
Yeah.
Wild. It's incredible to think that something as simple as paying attention to your breath can have such a profound impact on both mind and body.
It really speaks to how interconnected our physiology and our mental state truly are.
Absolutely. And you know what else I found fascinating? The personal stories about how meditation has impacted people's lives. Like, you included Salman Rushdie's experience in your research after that horrific attack he endured. He turned to meditation to heal, to process that trauma, to ultimately reclaim his voice. Powerful stuff.
It really is. And, it reminds us that meditation isn't always about achieving this blissful state of peace sometimes. It's about facing those messy, uncomfortable parts of ourselves and finding ways to work with them. And that's where that idea of self-compassion comes in, which you've explored through My Pocket Meditations for Self-Compassion.
It really does, because when I think about those challenges of meditation, quieting the mind, facing those inner critics, yeah, self-compassion feels pretty key. So what insights does this Pocket Meditations book offer? What's the approach there?
Well, I think one of the first things that really struck me about this book, My Pocket Meditations for Self-Compassion, is how it really emphasizes how hard we are on ourselves. That inner critic that just never seems to quit.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right. This book, it provides a framework through these simple but powerful exercises for really shifting that inner dialogue. For replacing that harsh self-judgment with kindness.
Okay, I like that. So what are some of the specific exercises it recommends?
Well, one that I found really helpful is called Think of a Loved One's Mistake. And it encourages you to really visualize a situation where someone you care about deeply, made a mistake, maybe even hurt you. And the idea is that by stepping into that compassionate space that you'd offer to them, it helps us put our own slip-ups into perspective. Everyone makes mistakes.
We are often kinder to our friends than we are to ourselves. I love that quote, and this exercise feels like a way to actually apply that, to extend that grace inwards.
Exactly. And that leads into another exercise from the book. List your favorite ways to receive love. So it makes you consciously think about what truly nourishes you emotionally. Words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time. By recognizing what fills your cup, so to speak, you become more open to receiving that love from others and from yourself.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like you're kind of priming yourself for self-compassion by first recognizing what you actually need, what brings you joy. I feel like we often go through life not really tuning into those things.
Exactly. And speaking of tuning in, the book also dives into some practices for cultivating mindfulness in everyday life. Like there's one called Take a Meditative Stroll, bringing that awareness you cultivate during, seated meditation into your actual walking. Paying attention to each step, the breath, the sensations, the sights, the sounds around you.
Transforming an everyday activity into a moving meditation. Instead of rushing around lost in thought, you're fully present. I love that.
Absolutely. And then for those times when you just need a mental escape, the book offers a really cool visualization exercise. Take a nature walk in your mind.
Okay, that sounds amazing.
Right, like a mini vacation for the mind. And it's not just a whimsical exercise. There's actual research showing that even visualizing nature can have similar calming effects on the brain as actually being in nature.
Wow. So it's really tapping into something powerful there. I have to admit, when I saw this next one you mentioned, it definitely piqued my curiosity. Give yourself a hug.
Yes. Now, I know it might sound a little strange,
Just a bit.
but the idea is to actually visualize giving yourself this warm, comforting hug, and to offer yourself words of encouragement and support, just as you would to a dear friend. It might feel silly at first, but the intention is to really embody that feeling of self-love and acceptance, physically.
Embodying it. I love that. It's like bypassing all the mental chatter and going straight to the heart of it.
Exactly. And speaking of the heart, another practice the book explores is using mantras to cultivate self-compassion. It guides you through creating your own personal mantra, a phrase that really resonates with you and reinforces your inherent worthiness and resilience.
Like a little mental anchor you can return to when you need it.
Exactly. And then finally, My Pocket Meditations has this really quick but powerful practice called Give Yourself a Break. It's like a mini self-compassion meditation you could do anytime, anywhere, just pausing even for a few breaths and offering yourself that kindness and understanding.
A good reminder that it's not about achieving some perfect state, but rather, just that ongoing practice, being kind to ourselves, especially during those tough times.
Absolutely. And that actually brings up a really interesting connection to another area you've been exploring, the intersection of meditation and, believe it or not, memory. You got Anthony Mettivier's The Victorious Mind in your stack, which delves into some pretty fascinating stuff.
Yes, I was so curious about that one. On the surface, memory and meditation, they seem so different. But Metivier makes the case that they're actually deeply interconnected. How so?
So Metivier's argument is that by strengthening our memory, particularly through techniques like the memory palace, we can actually enhance our meditation practice.
Okay, now that is interesting. I've heard of the memory palace, but honestly, I'm not quite sure I get it. It sounds kind of like magical.
It is a pretty powerful tool. Imagine a familiar place, let's say your house. Now picture yourself walking through it, and you're placing these vivid images that represent things you want to remember at specific locations. That's essentially the memory palace technique. Using spatial memory, our natural ability to remember places, to organize and recall information.
So like a mental map of your house with these memory triggers along the way.
Exactly. And the more bizarre and memorable those images are, the better. Metivier actually even suggests drawing out your memory palace to solidify the journey in your mind.
Wow. And didn't Metivier actually use this technique to memorize entire books?
He did. One of them being the Ribu Gita, an ancient Sanskrit text on meditation.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, and he describes how he uses the memory palace not just to memorize the verses, but to internalize their meaning. It becomes a tool for contemplation and reflection, allowing him to really access that deeper wisdom within the text.
Wow. So it's not just about memorization, it's about truly integrating the knowledge, embodying it almost.
Precisely. And he emphasizes that anyone can learn these techniques. It's about stretching those mental muscles, developing that focus and concentration that's so key for meditation.
So we're training our minds to be these incredibly receptive vessels for wisdom, for deeper understanding. This is making me rethink my whole approach.
It is fascinating how it all connects, isn't it? But I can see how with all of this, it might feel a bit overwhelming. How do you actually navigate this huge world of meditation and find what speaks to you? And that's where I think Kelsey Tyler's book, The Other Side of Silence, offers a really great perspective.
The Other Side of Silence. Okay, yeah, I like that title. It hints that there's more to meditation than just, trying to shut your brain off, that it's about getting to something deeper. So what does Kelsey Tyler say about that?
Well, one of the core ideas he explores is this concept of different kinds of silence. He talks about small silence and big silence.
Oh, interesting. What's the distinction there?
So small silence, that's that temporary stillness we might experience during like a meditation session. The mental chatter quieting down, being present in the moment. Incredibly restorative. But then there's big silence. A much more, I guess, profound shift in awareness. Something that starts to influence your whole life, not just when you're on the meditation cushion. Yeah.
So less about achieving perfect mental quiet and more about a deeper sense of presence and peace that just becomes part of how you live.
Yeah, exactly. And Tyler's really upfront about how this journey to big silence, it's not always, straight line, not always blissful. He shares a story, actually, about a man who witnesses the crucifixion of Jesus and loses his faith because of it. He's dealing with so much doubt, grief, and it's through meditation that he eventually finds his way back to a sense of wholeness.
Wow, that's powerful. So meditation as a source of strength, of resilience in the face of real suffering. Not about escaping life's difficulties, but navigating them with more clarity and compassion.
And that's a great point because Tyler really stresses how important guidance is along the way.
Yeah.
He talks about finding a spiritual director, a mentor, someone who can offer support as you explore your own inner landscape.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense having someone who's been there, especially if you hit a rough patch. Because let's be real, meditation isn't always easy, right?
Right. He's pretty honest about the potential difficulties, too. He talks about how meditation can actually bring up challenging emotions or thought patterns that you weren't even aware of before. He even talks about meditation sickness, which can be a kind of spiritual crisis. It can happen when you go deeper into your own consciousness.
Intense. Okay, that's wild. It's definitely a good reminder that it's not all, relaxation and bliss. It can be a seriously transformative process, maybe even a bit unsettling at times.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly why Tyler's emphasis on self-compassion is so important. He says that it's through really embracing everything, the good and the bad, the joy and the sorrow, that we can really find true liberation.
Meeting yourself where you are without judgment, just curiosity and kindness. That makes sense. So we've covered a lot today, haven't we? It feels like there's so much wisdom woven into all these different sources, these different approaches.
There really is. From ancient practices to neuroscience to self-compassion and those powerful personal stories. It's quite a tapestry.
It really is. As we wrap up then, what are some key things you hope listeners take away from this deep dive, from all this amazing research you've been doing?
I hope above all that they feel a sense of possibility. Meditation isn't just for, monks on a mountaintop. It's a tool for anyone who wants to explore their inner world, improve their well-being. And there's so many ways to do it. It's about finding what resonates with you.
It is easy to get overwhelmed with all the choices out there, but yeah, the best practice is the one you'll actually stick with.
Right. And be patient with yourself along the way. It takes time, consistency. Show up for yourself even when it's tough.
And stay curious. Have an open mind. Experiment, Let yourself be surprised. You have this amazing inner wisdom. Trust it.
Beautifully said. And remember, this deep dive, it's just the beginning. Now it's up to you to keep exploring.